increasing rapidly, and it's essentially a global right. The rough numbers are that there are on the order of 1 billion smartphones. There are on the order of 2.3 billion computer connections, internet connections, and they're on the order of 5 billion mobile phones. So the phones that are dumb phones, that is SMS-capable phones, will all be upgraded to these smartphones, and as that upgrade occurs, there will be a revolution in information, in entertainment, and we take it for granted here in Israel because we have such good technology, but we were just in Afghanistan, Pakistan, countries that you wouldn't normally visit, and all of a sudden, when these devices show up in a village there, it's life-changing. From literally no information to all information. No entertainment, all entertainment. I personally have no idea what will happen when that occurs, but I know it will happen.
And modestly enough, you tell me there are things that we do not know. We do not know where this new, brave new world is leading us. And I wonder on a personal level, and this is truly a personal question, are there moments in which it dawns on you that perhaps Eric, the baby boomer, born in another century, in another age, will find it difficult eventually to compete with these smart guys born digital?
Well, that's already true.
Tell me, when do you feel it?
Well, as a programmer, they're going to be much better programmers than I am now, although I would claim I was pretty good when I was 20. But the difference now is that there's so much more information to master. One of the things that's occurred in science, in humanities, in these fields, is they become very, very deeply complex. And so the ability to master them is a huge challenge for our younger generation. The Minister of Speech and Education was important because Israel has a strong education, a strong university system, and I think it's very important that that be strengthened to continue to keep the country, your businesses competitive. I feel the same way about the United States.
And when you spend time with these guys at Google, the young engineers, the young computer scientists, where do you feel that they are different than you? In the way they see life, in the way they perceive?
The biggest change generationally is that people work in teams now. It's sort of two changes. This generation, because they've grown up digitally, take it for granted in a way that is hard to describe. Typical example is an employee will come in and say, oh, you know, I have a terabyte on this hard drive. And I said, do you have any idea how big a terabyte is? Right? I can tell you physically how big a terabyte is. I can also, and not only is there no recognition of it, there's also no credit for the work that we did. I still enjoy landing at an airport and discovering that the internet works in that country. And to me, that's still a great joy. And for this generation, oh yeah, it's always been that true. Of course, we forget. And I think we were talking today at Google, that today it's possible for an executive like myself to travel around the world, stay connected, and aside from time zones, right? The internet works everywhere. You can get connected. You carry your computer. I use a Mac rather than a PC, and off we go.
And you made it a point to address this young generation. Just a couple of weeks ago, in a commencement speech that you gave in BU in Boston University, and you found it important to tell them that they are the first fully connected generation, but also you had an advice for them. You said, you cannot let technology rule you. And you asked them, take 1 hour a day and put it off, the machine, the smartphone, the computer. Take 1 hour a day and turn that thing off. Take your eyes off that screen and look into the eyes of the person you love. Have a conversation, a real conversation. And I was wondering...
And at the end, I then said, and then turn it right back on.
While you were saying...
Only 1 hour, guys.
That was my next question. But while you were saying it, you know, that the camera was picking on a female student texting in her smartphone. And, you know, for her, why was it so important for you to tell them?
What you learn in life as you get older is that what matters is who you travel with, not what you do. So I've been fortunate that in my career I met extremely smart people, and that some of us were successful. There's nothing that I did by myself. And what I learned was that, and my advice to everyone, is it's who you live with, who you work with, who you have fun with. It's about people. And people is not the same thing as texting them all the time. Now, and I suggest a modest budget of 15 hours online and 1 hour with people.
Do you implement it?
Yes, of course. I turn off my Android phone, my other devices at dinner time. Because dinner, if you look at societal structure, dinner was always where, in every society, where family lessons were passed down, oral traditions were passed down. This is a human thing.
And that brings me to the question which we are dealing with in this big tent, and that's the connection or the correlation between information, progress, technology, and freedom. Is there necessarily a connection? These guys that you met in BU, they are much more knowledgeable than, I guess, your peers were at their age. They know more, they can get much more information. Are they more free?
Well, it depends on whether they work and live in a country that is free information or not. One of the problems with censorship is that you don't know what you don't know. You always have to suspect there's some fact or some piece of opinion that you're not being given because you don't deserve to know. That's a terrible way to live. It makes you paranoid. It makes you feel that you're not fully human. We take the view that you as an individual should be given all the information, and then you should make your decision. That you should be skeptical of the information that you find. You should be skeptical of what people say, including what I say, by the way. But the important thing is you should make up your own opinion, and that you have all the information to make that decision. We argue, furthermore, that countries that implement censorship, or balkanized internets, URL filtering, content filtering, and so forth, will ultimately not be as competitive because the nature of critical thought, the motion of society, entertainment, new businesses, really requires seeing everything so then you can make an informed decision about how you spend your time.
In that sense, Mr. Schmidt, and that's going to be a direct question, do you regret engaging the Chinese government instead of breaking away the moment they applied censorship on your search results?
Since I was the architect of it, I'll give you a direct answer. We believed that the best strategy was to enter China and to, working with the citizens who are good people, show them the value of openness, and that internal pressure from within China would curtail the misbehavior of the Chinese government. That was our opinion, and I promoted this view. After 5 years, I can tell you that our strategy did not work, but we did try. After 5 years, and to this day today, censorship has gotten significantly worse in China. Censorship at the blogger level, censorship at the Gmail or equivalent level. And in fact, the Chinese have built a surveillance society with very aggressive proxy caches, ways of disconnecting connection, and omitting information. They've done so because they can, not because it's the right answer for their society. So we are strongly in favor of China opening up that policy. What we did is we moved to Hong Kong, and there's a firewall, which is known as the Great Firewall, which exists between Hong Kong and the mainland, and China attempts to implement the censorship pattern.
I know you've been honest with me so far, but I would appreciate honesty in the next response as well. Is there a lesson that you learned in terms of image, in terms of taking some blows, in terms of Google being painted in colors that it wasn't used to?
But I think you're completely misreading the benefit of this. If you don't try, you don't know. We honestly tried, and it honestly did not work. But in hindsight, we did everything we could think of at the time to effectuate an opening of the strategy. It just didn't work. Now, I think one of the characteristics of Israel, and one of the characteristics of the startups that I met with today, is this notion of keeping trying and so forth. Society moves forward by trying things, failing, apologizing, trying again, and so forth. It's the secret of innovation. Google is full of things that we've tried, and the good news is most of the products that have failed, I've forgotten their names. Right? We celebrate Gmail and Maps and Search and Android, unbelievable Chrome. Do you realize that Chrome is now doing better on a market share basis than Internet Explorer?
It is better, I can testify.
It is, and furthermore, not only do you, an ad for Chrome for a second. If you care about security, use Chrome. If you care about speed, use Chrome. And if you care about society, all your friends are using Chrome. So use Chrome. Right? And furthermore, you agree. So therefore, the two of us must be correct. My point is, we celebrate those wins, but there were an equivalent number of things which didn't work. But we had a quick way of saying, look, these were good ideas, but they weren't good enough, or we made an error, or the engineering team made an error, or that it was the wrong time of the market. We eliminated those. We took those engineers, by the way. We told them, thank you very much. You did a good job. And we put them on something that was going to work. And that's the secret to a successful high-tech company.
We spoke about China. I want to spend a couple of minutes talking about the Arab Spring. Those young protesters in Egypt and in Tunisia and later in Libya, I admit that we Israelis were very skeptic from the starters of this Arab Spring. But eventually, I guess many people in the world can see that not even one democracy was born in that Arab Spring. Can the internet truly inspire winds of freedom or just coordinate the protest?
So I've now visited Egypt, Libya, and Tunisia at various times, Libya and Tunisia most recently. And one way to understand the narrative is to understand that the dictators who ran those countries had a complete censorship strategy for everything except the internet, because they were too old.
Too old?
Too old. They were in their 70s and 80s. They didn't understand.
It was a mistake.
If you're a dictator. So I hope no one here wants to be a dictator, but in dictator lessons, you see why we think censorship is so bad. And the failure to censor and understand the consequences gave the people who were fighting for freedom for decades a tool that they did not have before. So the rebel leaders who now compose the government of Libya told us that they had been trying to overthrow Gaddafi for literally 10 years. There had been a series of attacks and attempts to overthrow this terrible government. And various people were killed and so forth, so they were wary. And then using the tools of the internet, they were able to do a simultaneous attack. It was the fact that they had real-time simultaneousness, whatever it is, to allow them to get the jump on the well-organized and overwhelming forces of the evil regime.
So now there's
and so that's what they said. I want to say one other thing about this.
Sure.
It is not the tech companies that made these revolutions happen. It is the sacrifice of the people who simply used tools that were available to them. The fight for freedom is led by people who are willing to take huge risks, including to their deaths. Right? And unfortunately, we're seeing a repeat of this in Syria, where it's coming out the other way. But the fact of the matter is that societies have to exist at some level with the consent of the government. And all of those countries fail for that reason. As to whether they will ultimately become Western-style democracies, I don't know. But what I do know is that what democracy couldn't achieve, an internet-powered revolution did achieve, which is the overthrow of a status quo that was not working.
And now there is a playbook for dictators such as Bashar al-Assad, who knows how to block YouTube and just arrest the bloggers?
Well, again, it's interesting that the data that we've assembled is that shutting down the internet is seen as a very drastic action. So if you lived in a dictatorship and you're trying to get through life, and you use the internet every day, and there's this group over here that's demonstrating, well, there's always people who are unhappy. Well, if the government shuts down the internet, that's a signal to you that they're scared. So now you as an individual have a choice. You can choose with the government, or you can choose with the rebels. An important decision and not one you'll make lightly.
Before we open up for questions from the audience, I read something very interesting which you said about old-time journalism and the sense of responsibility that you have, despite the fact that Google sees itself as trying to make the world a better place with more information. You say there are bloggers all over, but well-funded, targeted, professionally managed investigative journalism is a necessary precondition, you say, in my view, to a functioning democracy. Can it really?
Someone took it really well.
Can it really happen in a world where Google is perceived to be sometimes a newspaper killer?
Well, we certainly do not wish to be a newspaper killer. I think that newspapers are incredibly important for many reasons, and newspapers will certainly survive, perhaps in different forms. There's a very serious loss on there, and that's a serious loss of the kind of goodwill that a newspaper did. They would spend money in an expeditionary way. They would say, perhaps there's a problem over here. Let's go investigate. Let's go really thoroughly research. And there simply is not enough money to do that. As a result, we're losing one of the most important voices, a professional investigative role that the newspaper and the publishing industry provides in a functioning
It
democracy.
will expose the Pentagon Papers.
Yes, although you could argue that Daniel Ellsberg with the Pentagon Papers would have simply put them to WikiLeaks.
Would he?
I don't know, he's no longer with us. But his political inclinations would have led me to believe that he would have been quite happy to do that. And remember that there was actually tried, the New York Times and he were tried over the leak, and in a complex decision it was decided that it was actually okay. So his decision to release the Pentagon Papers, which altered the war in Vietnam, was a substantively courageous and or criminal decision, depending on your point of view of the United States.
But still, it is your argument that the New York Times can do things which no blogger can do.
I believe that there will always be trusted sources of information. Every society that I know, and I'm sure perhaps it's your organization, has spent decades developing the trust of its readers and its citizens. We have not yet seen such groups emerge purely on the internet, although there are some that are coming. For example, in America, I'm not as familiar with the market. Well, let me give you a pretty good example. In Washington, a group called Politico exists. And Politico started off essentially as an online service, but it's run by people who are veteran journalists. And they are clearly proving an online model that generates revenue, and they're beginning to break stories. So I think there's reasons to think, Huffington Post as well, but let's use Politico. It's run by people from the older industry using newer tactics and newer revenue streams, and it appears to be doing very well. So I think that's a replicable model there as well.
We want to spare some time, Mr. Schmidt, to have several questions from the audience. So I would love to get some questions. Yes, please. What's your homepage?
Google. To be honest, I actually use Google News and regular newspapers, and I read the leading U.S. newspapers. The other thing that's interesting is that, like most people now, I get a lot of information from people emailing me, posting things on Google Plus and Facebook, and using Twitter.
Have you already come to terms with the fact that an iPad is more than simply a big iPhone?
Yeah, that's a little unfair.
Do you own one?
Do I own an iPad? Absolutely. I also own an Android tablet. My job is to understand all these products.
And you have the Nexus tablet.
Of course. Would you like to see it? This is the Nexus S. The core strategy that Apple has followed, which Google has also followed, is to have one operating system for the devices that are both phones and tablets. And the only difference is a difference in screen size. So in that sense, I was right.
And now I'll give you 3 terms, and you just go ahead with the first association.
I love these games.
They always work. Success.
I think ultimately success is designed by impact.
By the result.
Impact.
Privacy.
Privacy is something which we should be very concerned about.
And we learn how to do.
I'm waiting for your next word.
Google.
I hope Google has made your life better, and if it hasn't, we're not doing a good enough job. And that's our goal.
And you're still shocked at the success, the impact?
Yeah, I continue to be shocked at the power of information. I've done this a long time, and every day I am always surprised at how important information is, how bright the future for information is, and how creative people are with it in Google.
Was there one moment in the years you spent in Google Plus, one moment?
I'm still there.
I know. One moment which you can call the climax?
Oh, the future is just starting. It's important to understand that there's this tone that somehow we're just beginning, guys. We're just getting the basics of programming, of communications and information. These platforms are supercomputers, masked as phones. This phone and the variants of it, and even, by the way, the iPhone, they have so much behind it. We have no idea what we'll be able to do with it. But I remain convinced that the computational power, the data analytics power of all those supercomputers, helping me play Angry Birds, it's phenomenal.
Mr. Schmidt, thank you so much.
Thank you.